Why January 9th is quietly gaining attention. January 9th may sound like just another ordinary date on the calendar, but behind the scenes it has been gaining attention for a reason that matters deeply to millions of American seniors. On that day, the government releases the December jobs report, a snapshot of how many jobs were added or lost, how unemployment is moving, and whether the economy is strengthening or quietly slowing. Because of holiday timing, this report arrives later than usual, landing squarely on January 9th. At first glance, jobs data may not seem relevant to retirees, but history shows it often sets the tone for what comes next. When employment is strong and unemployment remains low, Washington tends to step back. Lawmakers feel less urgency to provide additional financial support. But when hiring slows, job losses appear, or unemployment begins to rise, the conversation changes. That's when discussions about stimulus checks, rebates, or other forms of relief start to resurface. Not guarantees, not promises, but conversations. For seniors, this matters because even without working, you feel the effects of a slowing economy, rising grocery prices, higher prescription costs, increasing insurance premiums, pressure on retirement savings and state budgets. Many older Americans are quietly cutting back, stretching dollars, and hoping for stability. January 9th doesn't decide policy on its own, but it offers something important: clarity, not political spin, not headlines, just numbers that help leaders understand whether pressure is building beneath the surface. This date isn't about hype, it's about insight, and insight often comes before action. What the jobs report really signals to Washington. To understand why January 9th matters, it helps to understand how Washington actually uses jobs data, not in speeches, but in decision-making. The December jobs report acts like an economic temperature check. It shows whether employers are still hiring, whether layoffs are increasing, and whether unemployment is quietly ticking upward or holding steady. These numbers don't create policy by themselves, but they strongly influence the tone of policy discussions. When job growth is solid and unemployment stays low, lawmakers tend to feel more comfortable. The message they take from the data is simple: the system is holding. Even if people are uncomfortable, leaders often believe the economy can manage without additional intervention. But when the data weakens, the mood shifts. Slower hiring, rising unemployment, or downward revisions to earlier reports suggest something deeper is happening beneath the surface. That's when conversations about stabilization begin, not out of generosity, but out of concern that economic weakness can spread. For seniors, this connection is important even if you're no longer working. A weakening job market often leads to reduced consumer spending, pressure on small businesses, and strain on state and federal budgets. Those pressures don't stay isolated. They ripple outward into retirement accounts, benefit programs, healthcare systems, and the cost of everyday necessities. That's why policymakers watch these reports so closely. Jobs data is often the first sign that households are struggling more than headlines admit. January 9th doesn't promise action, but it does shape the environment in which decisions are made. If the numbers show softness, discussions around relief tend to grow louder. If they show strength, urgency tends to fade. Either way, the report helps reveal whether pressure is building, and pressure is what eventually forces conversations to move forward. Why seniors feel economic shifts. Even without working, one of the biggest misunderstandings in economic discussions is the idea that job reports only matter to people who are still working. For seniors, that couldn't be further from the truth. Even in retirement, you live inside the same economy as everyone else. When the job market weakens, it often signals that the broader economy is slowing. Businesses become cautious, spending tightens, confidence fades, and those changes quietly reach seniors in very real ways. You see it first at the grocery store, where prices rise faster than fixed incomes. You feel it at the pharmacy, where medications cost more even with insurance. You notice it when utility bills creep higher or when insurance premiums quietly increase at renewal time. For many seniors, retirement income does not adjust quickly or at all. Social Security checks arrive on schedule, but they don't stretch the way they used to. Pensions, if you have one, stay the same. Savings are asked to do more in an environment where everything costs more. When the economy slows, pressure also builds on state budgets and benefit programs. That can affect everything from property tax relief to healthcare services to how quickly agencies process assistance. These effects don't show up overnight, but they accumulate. That's why seniors often feel economic stress earlier than expected, even when headlines suggest things are fine. January 9th matters because it helps confirm whether this pressure is growing or easing. It helps explain why so many older Americans are quietly cutting back, stretching dollars, and adjusting expectations without ever making noise. You don't need to be working to feel economic strain. You only need to be living on fixed income in a world where prices keep moving. And for seniors across the country, that reality is becoming harder to ignore. What stimulus really means. Without the hype. When people hear words like stimulus checks, rebates, or relief payments, emotions tend to rise quickly. Hope, frustration, skepticism, sometimes all at once. And for seniors, those reactions are understandable. Over the years, many older Americans have heard promises that never fully materialized. Headlines made things sound guaranteed, only for proposals to stall, change, or disappear. That experience leaves people tired and cautious, and rightly so. So let's slow this down and talk about stimulus in plain terms. Stimulus simply refers to financial support the government sometimes considers when it believes the economy needs help staying stable. The goal is not generosity. The goal is prevention, preventing deeper economic slowdowns, widespread hardship, or collapsing confidence. Stimulus can take different forms. Sometimes it's a direct check. Other times it's a tax credit, a rebate, or targeted assistance that arrives later. But here's the most important truth. No stimulus is real until it is signed, approved, and funded. No headline can guarantee that. No social media post can promise timing. No video, including this one, can say a check is on the way without official confirmation. That's why the January 9th discussion matters, but also why it must be handled carefully. Jobs data can influence conversations. It can make lawmakers talk more seriously about relief, but it does not flip a switch. For seniors, the wisest position is grounded awareness, understanding the signals without building expectations, staying informed without making financial decisions based on hope or fear. Stimulus discussions come and go. What protects you is clarity, and clarity starts by separating conversation from commitment, especially in times when uncertainty feels heavy and patience is being tested. Why no one can promise checks, and why that's important. One of the most important points in this entire discussion is also one of the hardest to accept. No one can promise stimulus checks ahead of time. Not commentators, not headlines, not social media posts. Only Congress and the White House can turn an idea into reality, and even then, it takes time. Over the past year, there have been many conversations about possible financial relief, proposals for rebates, ideas for cost of living support, discussions about helping Americans cope with rising prices. Some of these ideas sounded encouraging, others felt rushed. Many never moved past the talking stage. That gap between discussion and reality is where confusion often grows. A lawmaker can suggest a plan, a president can say he supports an idea, but until legislation moves through committees, votes, negotiations, and budget approvals, nothing is guaranteed. Along the way, proposals are often reshaped, delayed, or dropped entirely. This is where many seniors experience emotional whiplash, hopeful one day, disappointed the next, simply because early conversations were presented as certainty. That's why it's so important to stay grounded. Economic data like the January 9th jobs report may influence whether these conversations become louder or quieter. Weak numbers tend to increase urgency. Strong numbers tend to reduce it, but neither outcome creates automatic action. For seniors, understanding this protects you from making costly decisions based on assumptions, spending money early, taking on debt, or counting on relief that hasn't been approved. The goal right now is not prediction, it's perspective. Watching the signs without locking your emotions to them, listening without letting rumors drive choices, staying informed without being pulled into false certainty. In uncertain times, wisdom moves slowly and it waits for facts, not promises. Why January 9th is a signal, not a turning point. As January 9th approaches, it's important to place this date in the right frame. It is not a turning point, it is not a deadline, and it is not a make-or-break moment for stimulus or relief. It is a signal. The December jobs report released on that day gives policymakers a clearer picture of whether economic pressure is easing or quietly building. Strong numbers suggest stability. Weak numbers suggest strain. But neither outcome forces immediate action. This distinction matters because many seniors have been led to believe that a single report can suddenly unlock relief. That's not how policy works. Economic decisions move in patterns, not in moments. If the report shows job losses, rising unemployment, or downward revisions to earlier data, it may increase concern behind closed doors. That concern can lead to more serious conversations about support for households, but those conversations still take time to develop, negotiate, and translate into real policy. If the report shows strength, it doesn't mean seniors are suddenly comfortable. It simply means leaders may feel less urgency to step in, even if prices remain high and budgets feel tight. For seniors, the key is understanding what January 9th does and does not do. It does not deliver money. It does not create guarantees. It does not override political realities. What it does provide is information that helps explain why discussions may grow louder or quieter in the weeks that follow. That's why watching calmly matters more than reacting emotionally. A signal helps you understand direction, not destination. January 9th turns on a light. It doesn't open a door. And for seniors navigating uncertainty, knowing the difference helps protect peace of mind and prevents disappointment from replacing clarity. Why January 9th is a signal, not a turning point. As January 9th approaches, it's important to place this date in the right frame. It is not a turning point, it is not a deadline, and it is not a make-or-break moment for stimulus or relief. It is a signal. The December jobs report released on that day gives policymakers a clearer picture of whether economic pressure is easing or quietly building. Strong numbers suggest stability. Weak numbers suggest strain. But neither outcome forces immediate action. This distinction matters because many seniors have been led to believe that a single report can suddenly unlock relief. That's not how policy works. Economic decisions move in patterns, not in moments. If the report shows job losses, rising unemployment, or downward revisions to earlier data, it may increase concern behind closed doors. That concern can lead to more serious conversations about support for households. But those conversations still take time to develop, negotiate, and translate into real policy. If the report shows strength, it doesn't mean seniors are suddenly comfortable. It simply means leaders may feel less urgency to step in, even if prices remain high and budgets feel tight. For seniors, the key is understanding what January 9th does and does not do. It does not deliver money. It does not create guarantees. It does not override political realities. What it does provide is information that helps explain why discussions may grow louder or quieter in the weeks that follow. That's why watching calmly matters more than reacting emotionally. A signal helps you understand direction, not destination. January 9th turns on a light. It doesn't open a door. And for seniors navigating uncertainty, knowing the difference helps protect peace of mind and prevents disappointment from replacing clarity. Practical signals seniors should watch. After January 9th. Once the January 9th jobs report is released, the most important question is not what the headline says, but what happens next. For seniors, real insight comes from watching how leaders and institutions respond in the days and weeks that follow. If the report shows weakness, pay attention to tone. Do policymakers begin emphasizing stability, support, or protecting households? Do economists start warning that growth is cooling faster than expected? Do discussions shift toward affordability, cost of living pressure, or household strain? These are not guarantees of relief, but they are signals that pressure is being taken seriously. Another important detail many people overlook is revisions. Sometimes earlier jobs reports are quietly corrected weeks later. Those revisions can reveal that conditions were weaker than originally reported. When multiple months are revised downward, it often changes the internal narrative in Washington. For seniors, this matters because policy is rarely based on one report. It's based on accumulation. You may also hear renewed discussion of tools other than stimulus checks, tax credits, rebates, temporary relief programs, targeted assistance. These conversations often start broadly before narrowing into something specific or sometimes fading away. What's important is staying grounded while watching these signals. Strong language without action is still just talk. Quiet concern followed by concrete steps is what matters. At the same time, if the report is strong, that also sends a signal. One that urgency may decrease even if seniors continue to feel pressure in daily life. Neither outcome requires panic. Your role is not to predict outcomes. It's to understand direction. Watching reactions, not rumors, helps you stay informed without being pulled into emotional swings. January 9th opens a window. What matters is how decision makers behave after looking through it. Why seniors should not tie their emotions to one date. As January 9th gets closer, it's completely natural for attention and emotions to start locking onto that single day. When uncertainty has been hanging in the air for a long time, any date tied to new information can begin to feel heavier than it should. But this is where perspective becomes essential. January 9th is not a finish line. It is not a yes or no moment for stimulus, and it is not a verdict on whether help is coming or not. It is simply one data point in a long, ongoing process. The danger for seniors is emotional overinvestment. When people pin their hope on one report, disappointment can hit hard if the numbers don't immediately lead to action. On the other hand, when fear takes over, some may assume nothing will ever change and shut down entirely. Both reactions pull you out of balance. Policy does not move in straight lines. It moves through conversations, revisions, delays, and compromise. Economic data nudges those conversations, but it rarely settles them overnight. For seniors living on fixed income, tying emotional well-being to a single headline can quietly increase stress. Stress that affects sleep, decision-making, and even health. And none of that helps protect your financial stability. The wiser approach is distance with awareness. Pay attention, but don't obsess. Listen, but don't anchor hope or fear to one outcome. Stay informed, but stay rooted in what you can control today. January 9th may clarify direction, but it does not define your future. You have already navigated far more uncertain moments than this one. What carried you through then wasn't a perfect forecast. It was patience, adaptability, and perspective. Those same qualities still serve you now. The goal isn't certainty, it's steadiness. And steadiness, especially in uncertain times, is a powerful form of control. Practical financial choices to avoid. Right now. During periods of uncertainty, the most costly mistakes often come from acting on assumptions rather than facts. And this is especially true for seniors living on fixed incomes. One of the clearest warnings in moments like this is simple. Do not make financial decisions assuming stimulus or relief is coming. That means avoiding large purchases made with the expectation that a future check will cover them. It means being cautious about taking on new debt, credit cards, payment plans, or loans, based on hope rather than confirmed income. Many people have learned this lesson the hard way. They spent first, expecting relief later, only to discover the relief never arrived or was delayed far longer than expected. The result wasn't help. It was stress, interest charges, and regret. Right now, the smartest move is restraint. This does not mean fear. It means wisdom. Take a calm look at your monthly expenses, not with judgment, but with curiosity. Are there subscriptions you no longer use, services that quietly increased in price, insurance plans that haven't been reviewed in years? Small leaks often drain more than big emergencies. If you have even a modest emergency cushion, protect it carefully. Unexpected co-pays, appliance breakdowns, or car repairs tend to appear at the worst possible moments. Having that buffer preserves peace of mind. Another critical point, be extremely cautious of anyone promising guaranteed checks. Scammers thrive in uncertain times. No legitimate relief program will ask for fees, gift cards, or personal information to unlock money. Pressure is the red flag. If someone urges you to act immediately, pause. Take a breath. Talk to a trusted person before doing anything. Right now, the best financial choice is not prediction, it's protection. Protecting your cash flow, protecting your information, protecting your peace of mind. Uncertainty doesn't require panic, it requires patience. And patience is one of the most valuable financial tools you already have. Preparing calmly without assuming the worst. In times like this, preparation is often misunderstood as pessimism. But for seniors, preparation is not about expecting bad news. It's about creating peace of mind regardless of what happens next. The goal right now is not to brace for disaster. It's to reduce vulnerability. One of the healthiest steps you can take is to gently review your financial picture as it exists today. Not to criticize yourself, not to feel regret, simply to understand where you stand. Knowing your numbers, income, fixed expenses, flexible spending gives you clarity, and clarity reduces anxiety. Another helpful step is communication. Many seniors carry financial pressure quietly because they don't want to worry family members or feel like a burden. But silence often makes stress heavier. Having an honest, calm conversation with a trusted family member or friend can ease that weight. You don't have to ask for help to share reality. It's also a good moment to double-check practical details. Make sure important accounts are accessible. Ensure contact information is current. Keep essential documents organized. These small steps don't create fear. They create readiness. What's equally important is what not to do. Do not consume news nonstop. Do not let every headline dictate your mood. Do not assume that uncertainty means failure or weakness. Economic cycles change, policies shift, conversations evolve. None of that reflects your worth or your judgment. You have already adapted to change many times throughout your life. You've learned how to stretch, adjust, and endure without losing dignity. That experience matters more than any report. Right now, staying calm is not avoidance. It's strength. Preparation done gently allows you to move forward without panic, regardless of what January 9th brings. And that steadiness is one of the most valuable forms of security there is. The emotional side of money that often goes unspoken. As conversations about the economy, jobs reports, and possible relief continue, there is one part of this experience that rarely gets enough attention: the emotional weight it places on seniors. Money, especially in retirement, is never just about numbers. It represents safety. It represents independence. It represents the ability to say yes to a medical appointment, a family visit, or simply turning the heat on without guilt. When prices rise and income stays fixed, the pressure doesn't just hit the budget, it settles quietly into daily decisions. Seniors tell the same stories again and again, choosing store brands instead of familiar ones, spacing out prescriptions, delaying home repairs, or skipping small pleasures they once took for granted. And often they do it silently. Many older Americans carry a deep, unspoken fear. I don't want to be a burden. That fear can be heavier than any bill. It leads people to absorb stress alone rather than ask questions or share concerns. This is why economic uncertainty feels different in retirement. You can't simply work more hours or rebuild savings from scratch. Every decision feels permanent. Every surprise feels larger. If you've been feeling anxious, tired, or emotionally worn down by financial uncertainty, that doesn't mean you're weak. It means you're human. What matters is not ignoring those feelings but also not letting them take control. Fear makes decisions louder and faster. Wisdom moves more slowly and with compassion. Right now, the most important thing seniors can give themselves is grace. Grace to feel uncertain, grace to slow down, grace to acknowledge that this season is harder than it should be. You are not failing because things feel tight. You are adapting. And adaptation, especially when done with dignity and care, is a strength, even when the world doesn't always recognize it. How policymakers react after the numbers come out. Once the January 9th jobs report is released, the most telling information doesn't come from the numbers alone. It comes from how leaders respond afterward. Policymakers rarely say everything directly. Instead, their priorities show up in tone, language, and focus. If the report reveals weakness, fewer jobs, rising unemployment, or downward revisions to previous months, listen carefully to what follows. Do leaders begin talking more about supporting households, protecting retirees, or easing cost of living pressure? Do they acknowledge strain instead of dismissing it? Those shifts matter. They suggest that the data is creating concern behind closed doors, even if no immediate action is announced. This is often how policy change begins, not with a check, but with a change in how leaders frame the problem. On the other hand, if officials emphasize stability, resilience, and strength, it usually signals reduced urgency. That doesn't mean seniors are suddenly comfortable. It means decision makers believe the system can hold without additional intervention. Another key signal is what gets ignored. When leaders stop talking about affordability or pressure on households, it often means relief conversations are being deprioritized. For seniors, understanding this helps separate reality from noise. Policy rarely moves because of public excitement. It moves because of sustained pressure, economic, political, and human. The jobs report adds to that pressure, but it doesn't act alone. Watching reactions over time, not just headlines on one day, provides a clearer picture of where things may be heading. This isn't about predicting outcomes, it's about understanding direction. And when seniors understand direction, they can stay informed without being pulled into fear or false hope, which is exactly where wisdom lives. Staying steady as the story continues. As we reach the end of this conversation, it's important to return to the most grounded truth in all of this. January 9th is meaningful, but it is not destiny. It offers information, not certainty. It provides signals, not guarantees. And understanding that difference protects seniors from unnecessary stress. No single report decides the future. The economy moves in layers. Policies develop through pressure, time, and negotiation. Sometimes progress is visible. Other times, it happens quietly behind closed doors, long before anything reaches the public. For seniors, the healthiest position right now is steadiness, staying informed without becoming consumed, staying prepared without becoming fearful, staying hopeful without attaching that hope to one headline or one date. You have already lived through moments far more unpredictable than this. Recessions, inflation spikes, market crashes, global events no one saw coming. Each time, you adapted, you made careful choices, you endured without losing your values or your dignity. That experience still matters. As new data comes out and conversations evolve, there will be noise. Some voices will promise too much, others will dismiss real concerns. The truth, as it often does, will sit quietly in the middle, unfolding slowly, imperfectly, but steadily. Your job is not to chase predictions. Your job is to protect your peace of mind. If relief comes, we will talk about it clearly and calmly. If it doesn't, you will still have the wisdom to navigate what's next without panic. Either way, fear does not get to drive the decisions. Staying steady is not passive. It is powerful. And as this story continues to develop, remember this: you are not behind, you are not forgotten, and you are not failing because things feel uncertain. You are doing what you have always done, moving forward thoughtfully, one calm step at a time.